This book was honestly like watching a Hallmark movie, except in book form. So this is not my typical kind of book that I read or pick up or gravitate to. But if there's one thing that will get me to read a book pretty much above everything else, it is if that book takes place in Georgia. Because, you know, like there's just something about reading a book that takes place where you live, right? Like it's just, it's fun to see your community through the eyes of someone else. Well, hopefully it's fun. In this case, it was. And so the Ex-Hex takes place in a fictional town called Graves Glen, but it reminds me a lot of a bunch of different mountain towns in North Georgia. And so it was fun to read through that with that lens. So even though I picked this book up and admittedly looked at it with disdain when I saw that it took place in Georgia, which was, you know, like a big immediate thing that was pointed out on the back cover, I grabbed it. And I'm really glad I did. So it was the perfect little cozy book. Not cozy per se, it was actually quite spicy. But I read it back in October and I couched it as my Halloween read. So it was just like the book that came to me at the right time because I was kind of in a reading slump, as you may have noticed, since there's not been much going on this channel. And so I was in the middle of reading 11/22/63 by Stephen King, which I loved, but it's pretty hefty. And before that, I had just finished Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. And I had finished that in August, maybe even July. So like from July to like September when I started 11/22/63, I didn't really read anything. Then I read 11/22/63 from like Labor Day to November-ish, just because it took me a long time to get through. And in between that, I read the Ex-Hex, which I read in like 2 days because it's a quick, easy read. And it was so cute. I like genuinely couldn't put it down. It was the perfect little palate cleanser, if you will. The first thing I liked about this book, and I already talked about this a little bit at the beginning, so I won't go super into detail, but it was the setting. I think that Graves Glen as a setting makes this book work more than anything else in the story. I am really big on place and setting as a character, and I think that Erin Sterling does a phenomenal job with making Graves Glen as a character in the Ex-Hex. It's like this kitschy, witchy version of Stars Hollow, and it's a lot of fun. And it's funny because like the author doesn't really dwell on anything in particular, and I wouldn't say like her descriptions and prose are outstanding. It's all just very normal, but I could also picture it easily and picture it perfectly. And like the college, the cave where the ley lines are, the shop, her aunt's house, even the little town square, it really worked for me. The second thing that really worked for me with this book was the story itself. It was well paced, it was interesting, and the world building is very soft in this. And that's not what I expected when I picked it up. I thought, you know, we were going to be thrust into this universe and have everything explained to us, but we're really not. I mean, we are thrust into the story, but the history of like, why is there magic in this world? Where these witches come from? It's not really explained. It's very soft world building. Even the history of like certain families is glossed over. That's not really my cup of tea generally. Like give me a big exposition dump, please. I want to know everything and I want to know it right then at once so I can digest it and have it as the story unfolds. That is typically how I am. But I don't know, it really worked for me in this case. And that kind of leads me to my third point, which is the writing style, or rather it's kind of like intertwined with my third point. It's not anything in particular was like outstanding in this, but it all just worked really well together. And like the author is a really good storyteller, and she was able to take all these different aspects, this cool world, like this cozy little town, these quirky but realistic characters, and put them together to form something that was really, really great. Like I was not kidding when I said earlier that this was like watching a Hallmark movie, and I don't even like Hallmark movies, but I liked the Ex-Hex so much. Now, one thing that I didn't like was the spice. I'm not a prude, but also it's not my favorite thing to read either. And I'll admit, I kind of skimmed those parts. Probably, honestly, because I was like hoping I would get some more information about the world and like have some heavier world building, which didn't really happen, but that's okay. Even though that part's not for me, which is, you know, a reason I probably don't really enjoy or gravitate towards romance books very often. Even though that part wasn't for me, as far as I could tell, they were very well written, and I've seen a lot of reviews say that everything was well written. I didn't know it when I picked this book up, but I later found out that this was like a really big book for, you know, this genre, I guess, this season. All my friends were like, oh yeah, I've seen that book everywhere. So it's not a critique. It's just a personal preference of mine. I didn't realize it when I picked this book up that it was going to be quite as spicy. I don't even know if that's the right term to use, but that's what I'm using. And so even though I didn't mind it, like that is kind of on me, but it's definitely also something I didn't like. It is what it is. So there you have it. That's a quick little review and my thoughts about the Ex-Hex. If you've seen it, you should take this as your sign to pick it up and read it, even if it's not what you typically gravitate towards, like me. And then after you've read it, you should pop back over here and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.